Hey guys, it's great that you've been able to join us this week as we continue in our second week of This Is Our Sex Talk. And I know you guys are mature enough to have this conversation. So let's be real, this isn't your first conversation about sex. And I get it, sex isn't something we openly talk about. It's something we tend to whisper about or speak privately, yet sex is good and powerful and deserves some undistracted, non-secretive attention. And before we start, when it comes to the important things, like those things that are good and powerful, like money, like sex, like your health, like your future, isn't it true that you want to approach with a plan instead of waking up one day unsure how we got here? So that's what we're going to do today. In this conversation, last time we kicked off by talking about how sex is good and powerful. So choosing sexual integrity matters. And this week, we're going to keep those phones close as we're talking about how, when it comes to sex, technology is good and powerful. So let's think about this a little bit more. First, let's acknowledge something important about technology. Technology is good. We can power our homes with the sun, cars can drive themselves. Phones means that we can be in contact with anyone at any time with the press of a button. At the same time, technology can be really difficult to manage. And you're not too sure how to think about this, because have you ever procrastinated whether purposely or accidentally using technology, whether a game, social media or videos? Would you want to be honest with your parents about your screen time and the amount of pickups you've had? Or what's the longest you've survived without your phone? Have you been overly confident in your ability to practice self-control online? Like, for example, you said that you wouldn't check out an ex's page and you did. You said you wouldn't put something online, but you did it. You said you'd never look at porn or sexual content, but you did it. And maybe you got caught up in sending or receiving nudes. Maybe porn has become a habit. When it comes to technology, it gets complicated quickly. There's so much potential for good and to do so much bad too. And sometimes some of us, not all of us, think we can handle more than we can actually handle. And that brings us to this next part of our sex talk. Now, the authors who wrote the Bible didn't know about technology we have today, but they did have something to say about the topics we're covering or the challenges those things create. One of the best things about the Bible is that its authors remind us that people who lived thousands of years ago aren't all that different to the people today. And we face the same kind of issues and challenges. So we read the Bible to get inspiration, but we also read it to know that we're not alone. We aren't the first people to face the challenges we face. And as we read the Bible, it can give us advice on things even today. So there's a guy we talk about a lot in the church other than Jesus, and his name is Paul. He was one of the central figures of the early church, and he wrote loads of the New Testament. And one of those things he wrote was a letter to the church in Corinth. Now, Corinth was a thriving city. It was a hub for a lot of businesses. It was wealthy, and it meant that loads of people visited the place. In some ways, it was a party town. If you think of places like London or LA, it was also a very sexual culture, a bit like today. And in the midst of all of this, Paul said this: flee from sexual immorality. When Paul says flee, he means literally run away. And Paul says to run from sexual immorality. And some of you might be asking, what is sexual immorality? Sexual immorality is acting in a way that doesn't line up with what God says is the best when it comes to sex. There is an inconsistency. On the other hand, integrity is when your actions matches your beliefs. And this is why you'll hear me use the phrase sexual integrity. And sexual integrity means respecting yourself and others when it comes to intimacy. It means you believe in respecting yourself and others, and you do your part to make sure that belief lines up with your actions. It may look like setting boundaries or making intentional choices to guard against situations you don't want to be in. And this can be how we think about porn, sexting, and the use of our technology. Sexual content is all around us. Snapchat, messages, movies, music, adverts, conversations, apps, everywhere. Porn alone makes $12 billion a year in industry. Of course, it's all around us all of the time, and here's what you and I know. It's impossible to spend time around something and not be affected by it. And this is the topic that's relevant to us all. And Paul continues, he says, all other sins a person commits are outside the body. But whoever sins sexually sins against their own body. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom have you received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. As we read this passage, Paul tells us a lot about the potential negative impact of sexual immorality. That is not because Paul had a low view of sex, it's because he knew how important sex was. And that, as we spoke about last week, sex isn't just physical, but it's spiritual and emotional too. And what Paul highlights here is that sex is powerful, and it can have an impact in lots of different aspects of our lives. And to be clear, desiring someone in a sexual way is common. Being curious about sex is good and okay. We are sexual beings, and it's okay to have sexual desires. God created it to be good and powerful. And I totally understand we can be curious about it. And that's why when it comes to sex and technology is a poor substitute for real sexual connection. Whether it's watching highly sexual movies, talking with other people online in a highly sexualized way, or seeking sexual experience over technology, when we shift what is meant to be in-person, physical connection to the internet, it loses meaning. It can easily become selfish. It can move our intentions from connection to pleasure. See, Paul never paints a full picture or tells the whole story of what we're meant to experience. There's always something missing, meaning we can have a tendency to make it just about physical pleasure and not about true connection. And why does that matter? Because while God created your bodies, God created you with a body, with a soul, with emotions, with spirit. And sex was designed to include all of those things. And we believe that this is so much more and so much better than what porn offers. The second could be technology is a poor educational tool for sex. When we turn to technology or porn to explore our sexual desires or our curiosity, we're asking it to do something that it was never intended to do. We're looking to satisfy deep desires, curiosities, and questions. More than this, we're looking to be fully known and a safe place in the realist way God designed. But porn isn't capable of doing that. It's not even what it's supposed to do. In today's world, when you have a question about your homework or a new artist or a new food trend you heard about, it's normally you turn to technology like our phones or computers. However, in the case of sex, the answer we find when we turn to porn or experiment with technology, it isn't designed to give you an accurate story. They're not there to inform or educate. And a lot of people start watching porn because they're curious. The problem is, porn was never designed to educate us about the whole picture of sex. Porn is a performance. It's staged. It's based on false versions of what real sex and intimacy looks like. It sets up unrealistic expectations, and the truth is, anything that it's designed or engineered or manufactured to appear perfect can be addicting. And we can find ourselves addicted to a sexual education coming from false information. A third is technology makes it easier to read people worse. Sexuality and technology can be tricky because being on your phone or iPad or computer can be sort of feel like you have a barrier between you and reality. Like you have an invisible shield, and it's the same when you see TikTok made me buy it. Like social media and the internet is made for our consumption. So when we get into the territory of other humans on the other side of technology, it gets infinitely more complicated. That's why when you see so many trolls on and in the comments of a post, it's way easier to treat people like they aren't real when you aren't face to face with them. And when you're talking to a username instead of a human, when you treat people like that, They aren't people with value, with worth, emotions, history, futures, families, and that's called objectifying them. And to objectify means portraying a human as an object meant just for your benefit instead of a person to be known, loved, and cared for. And any content that objectifies people for sexual pleasure falls into the category of sexual immorality. Sexual content that causes you to compromise your personal values or that makes sex into just something you consume also falls into the category of sexual immorality. And this isn't a knock against sexual desires or technology. This is about what's best for you, your future, and what's honorable for your body. Think of it this way, technology is good and technology is powerful. And when we turn to technology to satisfy our sexual desires, it leads us away from sexual integrity. So what does sexual integrity look like in the area of technology? Well, let's start by doing what Paul asks us to do. Flee from. Not walk, not avoid, not ignore, but actively run away. This means we proactively take steps that put us in a place to utilize what's great about technology without compromising our sexual integrity. And what would it look like for you to run away from sexual immorality? Then let's think about the next step. Run towards. It's not just about running away from something, it's also about running in a different direction. And when we run from using technology in an unhealthy way, what will we run towards? What part of sexual integrity do you need to intentionally move in the direction of? And whose help do you need in order to do that? Technology is good and technology is powerful. Maybe today it's time for us to consider if it's more power to use technology than we might have ever thought possible. And imagine being a person of sexual integrity in this area. Wouldn't that be better, more peaceful, and more hopeful? This is the life that God has for you. And you can see God's working when you choose sexual integrity and experience God helping you to live that out. See, God loves you and wants nothing but the best for you.